You probably know someone like this. Their birth certificate says 64, but nobody in the room is thinking about their age. They're thinking about how 20 minutes after meeting this person, they feel like they've known them for years. How conversations with them don't feel like conversations. They feel like being seen. How long after the visit ends, you catch yourself still thinking about something they said, replaying it, turning it over in your mind like a stone you don't want to put down, and then you know someone else. Same decade of life, same rough biography, kids raised, career behind them, plenty of hard years survived, but being around them feels different. Heavier. You leave feeling more tired than when you arrived, and you can't always say why. Here is the uncomfortable question this video is going to answer. What if the difference between these two people has almost nothing to do with personality and everything to do with 8 specific emotional habits? Habits so quiet you'd miss them if you weren't looking, but so powerful that psychologists can now trace them, name them, and predict who will still be unforgettable at 80 and who will simply be forgotten by 70. I'm not going to give you generic advice about staying positive. I'm going to show you the actual psychological mechanisms, the ones with names, the ones with research behind them, that separate people who become more magnetic with age from people who quietly become harder to be around without ever realizing it happened to them. Stay to the end, because habit number 8 is the one that makes every other habit on this list actually work. Skip it and the rest fall apart. Let's begin. Habit number 1. They let silence sit. From the outside, it looks like patience. They ask a question and then nothing. No filling the gap. No rescuing you from your own pause. Psychologists call this tolerance for ambiguity, the capacity to sit inside an unresolved moment without rushing to close it. Most people, especially as they age and grow more set in their patterns, develop the opposite, a compulsive need to fill every silence, finish every sentence, resolve every open question immediately. Internally, the person without this habit is thinking, this silence is uncomfortable, I need to fix it. The person with this habit is thinking, this silence isn't mine to fix, it belongs to them. 5 years from now, the first person has trained everyone around them to stop finishing their own thoughts out loud. Conversations with them start feeling shallow, rehearsed, incomplete. The second person has become the one people actually think out loud around, because they've proven, silence after silence, that they can be trusted with an unfinished thought. But there's a deeper habit hiding underneath this one, because tolerating silence is really about tolerating not being needed in every moment. Habit number 2, they ask before they advise. You've met the person who, the moment you mention a problem, is already 3 sentences into a solution. It comes from care. It usually lands as control. The mechanism here is called unsolicited advice bias, and research on it shows something counterintuitive. Advice offered before it's requested is processed by the listener's brain less like help and more like a mild threat to their competence. It triggers defensiveness, not gratitude. The person who's aged well has learned to ask, do you want my thoughts, or do you just want me to listen? Before saying a single word of guidance. Internally, they're resisting an old, deeply wired impulse, the same one that made them a good parent or manager decades ago, but which now, unfiltered, reads as condescension. Over 5 years, people stop bringing their real problems to the advice giver. They only bring the easy, safe ones. The asker, meanwhile, becomes the person everyone's actual crises get brought to, because they proved again and again that they could be trusted not to hijack someone else's pain. And yet, even asking permission isn't enough on its own, because it only works if what follows is genuine curiosity, not performance. Habit number 3, they stay curious about people. They already know this is subtler. It's not curiosity about new people. It's curiosity about the same people. Over and over. as if they might still be capable of surprising you. Social psychologists call the opposite tendency closure bias in relationships. Once we formed a settled impression of someone, especially someone we've known for decades, our brain stops updating that impression. We stop actually looking at them and start looking at our idea of them. The person aging well fights this actively. They ask their 50-year friend a question they've genuinely never asked before. They notice when their adult child has changed and say so, instead of relating to who that child was in 1995. The internal dialogue is the difference between, "I already know how this conversation goes, and let me find out if I still know them." 5 years on, the person stuck in closure bias has slowly become someone their own family performs a role for, rather than a person they're honest with. The curious one keeps getting new information right up until the end, but curiosity toward others means very little if you can't extend the same grace toward yourself when you're the one who's wrong. Habit number 4. They repair fast. Everyone, at every age, says the wrong thing sometimes. The difference isn't in the mistake. It's in what happens in the 90 seconds after. Relationship researchers, the Gottman Institute's decades of marital studies are the clearest data on this, found that the single strongest predictor of relationship longevity wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the speed and sincerity of repair after conflict. A quick, specific, non-defensive apology. Not, "I'm sorry you felt that way," a real one. People who age into becoming harder to be around tend to develop a slower, more defended repair reflex. Pride hardens with time if it isn't deliberately softened. Internally, if I admit I was wrong, I lose standing. The unforgettable ones think the opposite. Repairing fast is how I keep the people I love close to me for the time I have left. 5 years of fast repair versus 5 years of slow, grudging repair produce two completely different relational climates. One where people feel safe bringing up hurt, and one where people just quietly stop bringing things up at all. But repair only works on people who feel like their emotions were allowed to exist in the first place. Habit number 5. They validate the feeling before they address the problem. This is the habit most people get backwards their entire lives, and it's rooted in something psychologists call emotional invalidation, responding to someone's feeling with logic, correction, or minimization before you've acknowledged that the feeling makes sense. You shouldn't feel that way. It's not that big a deal. Have you tried just? All of it, however well-intentioned, teaches the other person's nervous system one thing: my feelings are an inconvenience here. The person who becomes unforgettable has trained themselves to say some version of that makes sense before they say anything else, even if they privately disagree with the conclusion the person is drawing. Internally, the invalidator is thinking, "I need to fix this quickly." The validator is thinking they need to feel heard before anything I say will actually land. Over years, people stop bringing real emotion to the invalidator. Around them, everyone performs fine. Around the validator, people finally exhale. And this is where the pattern starts to reveal something even bigger than any single habit. Because validating feelings requires a skill most people never consciously develop. Habit number 6. They regulate instead of react. Here's where the neuroscience gets specific. As the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, ages, for many people its reactivity to perceived slights doesn't shrink. It grows, especially without deliberate countertraining. This is one reason some people become more irritable, not less, with age, snapping at small provocations that wouldn't have registered decades earlier. But a smaller group develops the opposite trajectory through a skill called cognitive reappraisal, consciously reinterpreting a triggering situation before reacting to it. Instead of "they're disrespecting me," the internal move becomes "they're having a hard day, and this probably isn't about me." This isn't suppressing emotion, is its own well-documented health risk. It's reframing in real time before the reaction fires. 5 years of reappraisal versus 5 years of unmanaged reactivity produce two very different people. One whom family visits shrink around, tiptoeing, and one whom family visits actually expand around. But even a perfectly regulated person can still be exhausting to be around if there's one thing missing: genuine interest in something other than themselves. Habit number 7, they stay genuinely interested in the world. Psychologists studying successful aging keep circling back to a trait called openness to experience, one of the 5 major personality dimensions and the one most strongly correlated with people describing someone as still sharp, still fun, still themselves late into life. The opposite pattern is subtle, a slow narrowing, fewer new questions asked about the world, fewer opinions updated, more stories repeated exactly the same way because the story has replaced the actual memory. It isn't a character flaw. It's often just the brain's energy conservation instinct, left unchallenged. The person who stays interesting has made a quiet, deliberate decision to keep reading something new, asking a stranger a real question, forming a fresh opinion instead of recycling an old one. Internally, the world still has something to teach me versus I've basically figured it out. 5 years in, the first person is still being invited to conversations that matter. The second has become someone people are polite to, but no longer curious about. Do you see the pattern forming yet? Every habit so far has been about someone else, their silence, their advice, their feelings, their world. But there's one final habit underneath all 7 of these, and without it, none of them last. Habit number 8, they've made peace with being forgotten. This is the one almost nobody expects. The people who become the most unforgettable are, paradoxically, the ones who've stopped needing to be remembered. This is what psychologists sometimes call ego quieting, the loosening of the need for your legacy, your correctness, your importance to be constantly confirmed by others. It sounds like release, not effort. But it's actually the hardest emotional work on this entire list because it requires letting go of a fear most people carry their whole lives without naming it. Someone still gripping tightly to being remembered filters every interaction through what will they think of me? Will they remember this? Did I make an impression? It's exhausting to be around, even when it's invisible. Someone who has quieted that need is simply fully present, because presence was never a performance for them in the first place. And here's the paradox this entire video has been circling. The moment you stop trying to be unforgettable is the moment people can't stop thinking about you. Every habit before this one, the silence, the asking, the curiosity, the repair, the validation, the regulation, the openness, only works when it isn't secretly in service of being liked. It has to be free. And it can only be free once you've made peace with being forgotten. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you if you recognize yourself in the other side of these habits. Your brain, at every age, was built to protect your status and your standing, not to make the people around you comfortable. That's not a character defect. It's just an old design that hasn't been updated. So here's the question worth sitting with tonight. Which of these 8 habits have you already lost somewhere along the way? And which one, just one, could you begin practicing again, starting with the very next conversation you have? Because the people we can't stop thinking about were never the loudest people in the room. They were simply the ones who made it safe to be exactly who we were while they were with us.